And go. It's a matter of being recorded now at this point. It wasn't quite like that before. And, you know, if you make more episodes, then you don't have to deal with, you don't have to deal with every episode being worth it. Like, I don't need the pressure of making every episode worth it. So maybe prolificity is better than rarity overall. And, but that prolificity, I wish that I would just allow myself to make any episode at any time, because there's times when I am more excited to make it, but then like if I'm doing things rare, then I'm trying to make it so that the episode is unique. But you just get a deal going on in your brain sometimes that you're not that's more upsetting, or you feel more downtrodden about things. Like, not everything is euphoria, and not everything is glitz and glamour. But I sound like such a conservative if I talk like that. Hey, not everything is glitz and glamour. You gotta watch out for people that are about to harm you. Not everything is joy. You gotta be afraid out there. You gotta give some power to your fears. And like, what is a world that you don't give any power to your fear? Or is fear necessary? It's kind of like being responsible, or like being paranoid, like being overly aware so that you're responding to the situation that's at hand, responding the way that you're supposed to. If you're responsible, it's kind of like you have to be unnaturally aware of your surroundings to the point of paranoia if you're going to be very responsible, like if you're really going to respond to every situation. It's just that responsibility is kind of one of those games, like sociability, that you're supposed to play within the rules of responsibility, and like most of the time. Or this is just, it's such a widely accepted game that you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, the world is going to evolve to not partake in responsibility anymore. But like, there are some responsibility contracts that people enter into that are unnecessary. They involve getting into seriousness for the sake of seriousness, just so that you have a serious thing to do sometimes. Like getting a dog might be that, I guess. If you feel like you need to be more responsible, or like life needs to be more challenging, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you might think that you're not challenging yourself, and then you get into like obviously you need to learn to be responsible. This is what everybody says. But the need for like things that you get into that just make your life difficult and uncomfortable, it's like the need for discomfort. Is it really necessary? Is discomfort like, do you have to do that? It's like it's the same thing. It goes along the lines of saying that you need to have a tough background, or like a troubled background, or a story like you came rags to riches, or like you had a rough past in order to be great. Like, and I don't know that that's necessarily that is always true. Like, greatness always comes from hardship, or just that, like being said, the people who have the most to offer are like the most on the fringes of sanity and that kind of thing. Or like that's always the case. People push that great things come out of hardship and sadness only. And I heard Kanye West say that, I don't remember if I brought this up or not, but Kanye West said that same thing, that people always bring that up, like greatness comes out of sadness, but he said that it comes out of joy. He's like, he's saying that all the shit that he makes is really great. He feels like it's the opposite. It comes out of joy. I feel the same way. Like, when I'm joyful about doing something, like I can make a better episode if I'm really happy. Like, but I'm more engaged with what I'm talking about if I'm like excited about it. That you're like, I feel like some of the greatest stuff that anybody would make, they come from they come from moments of joy. Like it doesn't have to be joy that lasts forever. Like you don't have to be a positive person consistently, but like at the moment that you make something great, maybe that's more spawned out of joy for something than that like that's just kind of an American myth, like the story of like becoming a hero when you used to have it bad or something, like, or it's sort of a myth that you like, and a limiting one, a harmful one where you would think that in order to be great I have to make my life shitty, or like shitty things have to happen in order for me to be a successful person. It's kind of like how people look at uh, a victim, or say that like that people are able to garner praise for being a victim, that this is a viable reputation you can stake your life in, is like victimhood, because of the potential for it to turn around, because, or like, but people might get caught thinking that, and people definitely do, and I have in the past, that it's like your life has, you might self-sabotage or self-destruct more just so that you like, oh well, in the future I'll have a story or something. Like this is something that people engage in, and they engage in it more when victimhood is given the platform that it is, where it's like totally viable to be a victim, but like just like say that it's okay to be it's okay to go into victimhood and live with that, like just a world that hates on anybody who made money and is uh, afraid of people who are successful. Like I feel like the country is afraid of people who are overly successful or overly prolific, because like it's easy to be afraid of that when in lieu of actually trying to match that in your own life. It's easy to just hate on people who produce things. It's unfortunate, but that's just like the country, like it's kind of discouraging. It's sad that it is so discouraging that we tear down people who produce things, but it's to the point now that the tearing down, like the comments that people would make, I'd say that new level commenting is just goes as hard as it could possibly go, or is like would totally tear you apart if you were to listen to it, because like commenters are allowed to just say lies now. Or like comments are just, they've gone so far that they understand that the people producing content have to get over comments that are as bad as blatant lies or something. And I'm saying that people who would do hateful comments, they're they're pushing the envelope, like they're going further and further, and that's the way that it should be. Like it should get to the point that like you're either gonna be felled by comments, or you're not. So like the comments might as well be as horrible as possible, but that's what we evolved towards, like the people that were already in the business of just not producing anything but putting out comments to shit on people who do, that they've been in the business of getting worse and worse, like, and that's what Twitter says to you and says to me, is that the platform for an environment where people just tear each other down. But I feel like that criticism of Twitter isn't as good as like saying that Twitter sucks for being totally left wing. But like all of Twitter's news, and all of Twitter, all of Facebook, all of Reddit, all of YouTube news headlines are just totally left wing. But that's because the left wing is in the business of being more visible. They deal in visibility. For whatever reason, leftists and liberals have the resources to make their opinions visible. Conservatives are not in the business of that, or like they're not in the business of visible popularity of their opinions. They don't have the resources because they're less connected in that way, or they just don't find it important to have displays of their opinion in a visible manner. But like, because I'd say that they more deal in the imperceptible, but they're on the fringes of what, like the way that they influence opinion just happens in a more grassroots way, where it's like usually like it's over radio, it's over things that you don't see, but you see that when an election cycle comes around, that the split is still 50-50 between conservative and liberal. So it's like, even though liberals typically have all the visible popularity, on their side. It doesn't influence the entire country it still ends up 50-50. So it's like the war is between the perceptible and the imperceptible. It's just that a certain group of people, like liberals, characteristically deal in what's evidential and scientific, and they like to say that but they just deal in real instances, face value instances that are visible, and they like their visibility shit, and they like that. And but you get this vaccine, and I feel like in recent weeks that the modus operandi, I don't know what that means, of the modus, the agendas of the liberals, the agendas of the vaccine pushing, vaccine peddling liberals, and everybody's like, oh, the jab. That you get to say jab, and that's kind of a disgusting word, but everyone's like totally on board with it. But of course, that's propagated by liberalism. But it's just so wide. But I mean, it's a usable enough term that both sides use it. The jab, but what I want to know is when did it become acceptable to just show me images of a needle in somebody's arm? The second I open any social media, there's all these videos with the front where the thumbnail is a needle already in somebody's arm. Like, we used to censor this, like you're not allowed to say fuck in prominent places, but we're just allowed to show these crass images, like immediately needles in arms everywhere. It's just that the news outlets that want needles in arms are inundating everybody with that image. So that we just live in a world where needles are already in arms more so. I mean, that's just what that's the imagery that they want to inflict you with, is that, oh, they're like everybody, it's the same with what they're saying with their words. It's just like everybody got the vaccine, everybody's getting it, you better not be left behind. And if you are, then you're to blame, or something terrible is going to happen to you, or you're going to look like an idiot when you get the virus, or like they're trying to make you look like an idiot or a stupid person who thought that they knew better than everybody else. It's just like the authorities are always in the business of saying they're authorities. It's like, or being parental figures. It's the same in movies and film, that they're always pushing the authorities know better than you, no matter what. Your elders are always better narratives about, and it's always about like a stupid, like the narratives are always that a kid is stupid, and they receive their comeuppance because they're always ignorant, and they're always surprised. Like, there's no such thing as somebody who's younger who's also analytical or something. Like, it's always like, that's pushed in movies, but just by people who love authority, also love that narrative of the person that didn't agree with them and then received their comeuppance. But people who love authority, like, are dealing vengeance more so, that they like vengeance and one-upsmanship, and like, but rather than considering a lot of perspectives, rather than considering a lot of individualized perspectives, so as to not be as drastic as to bring vengeance into the equation right away. Um, But I don't know that it's a coincidence that football season is right around the corner, and then there big uptick in cases, and vaccine propaganda, and like somebody's closing a county district's worth of schools because COVID spread and bullshit like that. Right when football season is starting, because don't think that it's not a wet dream for these people, like heads of universities and politicians and and just people who are not liberals, people, vaccine enthusiasts. Don't think it's not a wet dream for some of these people that love authority, like heads of universities, to see football stadiums empty like they got to see last year, and they would do anything to make that happen again because they understand the cultural impact of full football stadiums. And I live in Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State plays in Columbus. I'd say that it's probably the most energizing of all things that happen in the city, of everything that you would talk about, because like Columbus is like a capital of the state, but it's also the largest city for just the city limits. But like they have, I'm saying that they have a number of things that you would be able to define the city by, but I'd say the most energizing and prominent feature is Ohio State football, and it's like the impact of it is obvious. And like the cultural impact of full football stadiums is pretty obvious, and the people that are vaccine enthusiasts know that if they're seeing full football stadiums, that they're losing the battle. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're excited. They just want empty football stadiums to fuck over the football season and fuck over people who like football, because the people that push the vaccines, basically a lot of them just hate culture. They hate to see people getting together. But they hate American culture. They want the death of America. They've just been pushing that. There are a number of people that see America and the borders of it and the sanctity of it as evil, whatever. I mean, not as evil, just something that they need to go away in order to we need to progress into the future. Is like people that hold on to the idea of America, they don't like them, and the cultural ties to football is something they also don't like. Like, not that that connection is exactly right there, but there's a lot of people that don't like culture, and I think that if they make it so that you don't walk into football stadiums, that we just, as a group of people, we just walk into the stadiums. They can't arrest, especially college football, they can't arrest 100,000 people. Like, we just, enough with the bullshit. We just walk into the stadium, because they're not going to arrest 100,000 people, and they have no right or real reason or basis or studies that they've actually done to prove to anybody that masks work. Like, as far as anybody knows, there are as many studies done to show that the particles for this disease go right through masks. It just that the mask wearing is pushed by people is obviously a virtue. It's just done on the part of authoritative people to say that, well, we all need to agree to the same point, and you just need to listen to what we're saying. It's just people who need to have their impact seen right away, and so take it upon themselves to be authority. Like, people in Starbucks and shit like that also love to enforce that you have to wear masks there, because like it's their time to be an authority and get to tell people off for doing some bullshit, even though it doesn't have anything to do with them or the person they're telling. Like, they just like to see that they're an authority, so they have some power and some control. And it's I don't know why. It's just that media outlets have a lot of power to push that message, and so then visibly it looks like that's what everybody's on board with. I think that it's still 50-50. It's just that the people that are against it don't have the resources to make their shit visible, because they're not inclined to do that, because they don't value what is visible anyway. They value something that's more futuristic or imperceptible, shit that doesn't happen in reality. Maybe you'd say fake, versus they value what's fake as opposed to what's real. But like the vaccine, it's time for the vaccine to get in your arm. You got to let it in there. You better let that vaccine in your arm. It's just that what we need to do as a group of people is we need to embrace the reality of the virus and resist it. We need to build up herd immunity against the virus. And by that I mean, we need to build up herd immunity against all these people that are trying to make the virus the most important reality in your life by regurgitating it back at you and repetitively just trying to overwhelm you and brainwash you with that the virus is very important. We need to the grave ignore these people and resist them. We need to build up herd immunity against the virus spreaders. We need to be strong against them. We need to resist these people that love this virus and love the impact that it would have, what it would mean for the world when there's this excuse to hide behind, to tell everybody to do the same thing, make everybody conform to the same set of actions, and make people more easily manipulatable and controllable. People that love this virus and the excuse that it provides for them to tell anybody off for whatever, we need to resist those people and build up herd immunity against them, because they are a virus that as a society we need to evolve beyond. We need to be a stronger community of people that resist viruses and move beyond that group of people and that ideology, because it is less helpful and it is not... It's not for, we need to build up herd immunity and be a surviving group of people that survives beyond viruses, I think, rather than allow a virus to destroy us, because that's what virus pushers want. It's people pushing a virus that just want everybody to go to sleep and wear a mask and stop talking as much as possible. and just be silent. It's a group of people that wants people to die and go home and stop saying things and stop being in public. And we need to survive past that and build up herd immunity against people who spread viruses like that. People who just want to inflict other people with viruses and make them worse, make them unhealthy, spread unhealthy lines of thought and lines of reasoning. We need to resist these people. And that's what we needed to resist. That's the thing that we had to resist right now, today in the world. That's the thing that we had to resist. And that's the thing that, and then let me gear up myself some zeal and some motivation and some intentionality here today, but not sound like I'm preaching a message. Is that possible? Is it possible to not sound like I'm preaching a message when I'm one guy? I think it is. I think that it's possible. But I'm just one guy, you know. How much can I do? And what would I be trying to do? How much can I do in the world? What's my cultural impact? It doesn't matter. This is just an unproductive and an unprofitable line of thought. You have to be I have to be more marketable than but it's like marketability is overrated. Maybe encryption is overrated. Maybe it's better to just give everything away. Maybe prolificity is better than rarity. Like, maybe it's better to just give everything away. Maybe that's the most unencrypted that you could be. Like sometimes if you lose everything, then you become, like, if you're the Titanic, you sink, you lose everything, and this makes you the most famous ship of all time. But the Titanic is able to do that because of the domain, the medium that it was participating in, which was that of ships. And ships are typically famous only if they sunk. So in order to be the best ship of all time, you probably had to sink. And so it's like the Titanic realized its full potential when it sank, became the most famous ship of all time. But it's like, not every ship could do that. You had to be something like the Titanic, where people were building it up to be the greatest ship ever. It's unsinkable, but it's like this fantastically man-made object. And basically the Titanic sinking is one of the greatest victories for women of all time, because it's a giant man-made structure made out of money, made for the purpose of making more money, made by men, envisioned by men, like orchestrated, and like the architecture of it. Like they drew up the plans for it, and they're like, this is an unsinkable ship. They take all the precautions or whatever. They're like, men are totally responsible for this ship if it sinks. And then then nature destroys it. And not only that, all women and children survive, and then it's all the men that go down with the ship. But that's the way that it should be, because they're the ones responsible, and that's what they deserve. They have to go down with it. But it's like these man-made objects are like, the ships on the sea are the only things that have all this electricity and current pumping through them, and are like made of money. They're the only unnatural things on the ocean. And then like, if one of them sinks because it gets felled by nature, then that is a failure of man. But like, what's interesting is that the Titanic is like a program that was written that it's like a token, and it's this current flowing through it. It's like a token of something, and it represents something you see, like that it represents something much bigger than that it's a ship. When you see that it sinks, and then it has this life where it lives on for forever, is because, like, everybody, like, to this day, everybody in this country knows exactly what the Titanic looks like, even though the ship has been gone for more than 100 years. Everybody like, the image of it or the brand of it is burned into our brain, even though it's a ship that's been gone for 100 years. Everybody knows what it looks like. It's like, the Titanic is a program that was written, that there was a caveat written into it or something, this allowable function that said that, well, if this ship sinks, based on its fame and its like its fame and its notoriety, everybody calling it the greatest ever. If this ship like sinks on its maiden voyage, then it will be the most famous ship of all time. It's like that was written into the program of it, because, or the character of it, like not every ship could embody that eventually upon sinking on its maiden voyage. Like not every ship could do that. Like a lot of things have to come together in order for for one ship to be the most famous or greatest ship ever. And so it's like it is the greatest ship ever, even though it sank to some extent or in some regards. It's still, even though it sank right away, it's like it's the greatest ship. That's what anybody would that's what anybody would say, okay? I don't have to sit here and argue that the Titanic was the most famous ship. And don't don't hold me to arguing that, or do hold me to that. Like, well, you need to argue further. I'm not sold. I'm not convinced. No. Or maybe me talking about it made you think that it isn't. That's even worse. Like you went into this thinking that it was the most famous, and then like I started talking about it, you're like, oh yeah, yeah, right. I doubt it. I don't know that anyone even remembers the Titanic. What is that? I forgot about the Titanic, the Titanic, the Titanic. But it's like a token that before it sunk, it's trapping current or has the ability to do that. But the real value and the real encryption of this token is that if it utilizes the function that if it sinks, then it's the most famous ship of all time, because then in that case it makes so much more money than it ever would have living out the normal lifespan of a ship just going back and forth, and then it got scrapped after like 30 years of service. It makes so much more money, is so much more a blockbuster story that you can make money off of, like make current off of that program, that brand of the Titanic. You can make so much more money off of it if it sinks than if it stayed afloat. And how much more boring and forgettable is the Titanic if it just lived a normal lifespan? It would have just been surpassed by the next largest ship, and people would have forgotten about it. But it lives on and on and on because it sank. So it's like to some extent, the story is you have to give up everything to be great. Sometimes you have to give up everything to be the greatest. At least if you're participating in the domain of ships. Like in some domains, I guess it's like that. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not all of them. But do you I just like didn't I'm not in a sparkling mood. I'm not really in a spectacular mood. So let me go into that. Let me talk about that. Not in a great mood. It just starts sometimes. Sometimes it just starts that I'm in a bad mood, and then like nothing. It's just that you have to go down the same pathways when you're in a bad mood. You have to go down the same pathways. You have to keep saying that you're in a bad mood if you continue to be in one. Like you don't get to go outside of it. You feel reserved to a contract of some point of some kind that you're trying to make good on. Like there's requirements that you need to meet of other people, and so this doesn't allow you the freedom to just do whatever. And so it's restricting. That's what is a bad mood to me. It's restrictive, and I restrict myself to continue in the same paths or participate in the same dramas and say that my life is only ever these dramas, and I don't ever rise above them or point out the drama that I'm continuing to engage in. Or it's just in like you can get into an affinity for victimhood where you say that other people are in control of my circumstances, or like I wouldn't be able to change it even if I tried because there's so much working against me. Sad moods and sadnesses for you. And like also I don't think I could be this. I don't think I could be funny. It's like I feel very suffocated if I feel sad. But people don't give a lot of credit to sadness because it doesn't really sell. It doesn't really sell to talk about your sadness unless you're Bo Burnham. But Bo Burnham is kind of a hoodwinker of sorts, where he turns sadness into a carnival. where it's like he turns sadness into a money-making effort, but it doesn't mean that he's not a genius anyway. Like, because it's not like anybody else is really doing that. Um, it's like real sadness doesn't sell. It doesn't get like, it doesn't get you likes. People don't really like a sad person or person who's putting out sadness because they don't want to be around that. But like everyone could use more likes in reality, right? Like who doesn't like likes, even if you are dislikable? Like likable people, unlikable people, don't they all like likes? Is everybody, or are there people that are like, no, I don't, I hate receiving likes on things. I like getting likes. Couldn't everybody like, doesn't everybody like more likes? Don't they like that? And don't they like more likes? You know what I like is not being expected to do anything. What I like is just the freedom. What I like is not not having to participate in other people's theaters or worry about that would be a problem. I like it when I don't care about what other people are doing or thinking, which happens sometimes, but unfortunately too rarely. Like in reality, it's more like I wish that I knew what it was like to not be concerned about anything. Like I guess lots of people are like they don't even think about the clothes that they're wearing, but I would like to know what that's like. I would like to know what it's like to not care ever. Like, oh, I'm not concerned. I just put on clothes and don't even think about it. I guess there are people like that. I'm too um, cerebral, maybe. I think about it, just over analytical. I think about it so that like I know that people know that a decision is made when you wear clothes or whatever. I would like to know what it's like to never care about something like that, but maybe it's just not enough practice in wearing different kinds of clothes that I wanted to wear or something like that, or but your experiences or whatever the fuck this episode is. But like maybe I should be more prolific than rare so that I don't have to make every episode be this great thing. So like, oh, here's the new thing, the new then if I'm giving myself a week, then the new episode has to be great. But that any episode is that great is probably up for debate among, but like that you would take time to say that the thing that you did wasn't that great. It's just I'm just in a sad mood where I'm not very enthusiastic. But can you be a leader when you're not when you don't feel like leading? I just think that leading is just this overblown, like it's just this thing where people put pressure on you, like finding the alpha versus who's the alpha and who's the beta. Like the leader, it's just something that puts pressure on people who are seen to be leaders, because the more that people are just sharing leader and saying calling whoever that, it's just to brings awareness to the situation, and that doesn't help whether you're actually a leader or not a leader. It makes it so that everybody views shit through the lens of leader, so that they're exposing the people who naturally aren't all the time and embarrassing them for it. But it's like people who aren't natural leaders are often in places of leadership too. They often find themselves, it's not that hard to find yourself in a place of leadership and not be a good natural leader, but everything is like viewed through the lens of leaders. And then if you are one, then you have to keep making good on that, because it is very important and very relevant that you be a leader, because somebody's a leader and they'll replace you, because there's so many leaders, there's so much focus on who is one, that people are trying to be that because they find because it's an irrelevant thing that you can stake your reputation in, is being that. So it's then becomes one of these things, as long as it's this prominent fixation in society, that everybody is trying to do that, because people are just trying to identify themselves to something that they can make money off of, but not so much that as like stake a reputation, and so they have this viable excuse that they can go back to that. But it's like, it's kind of like making money, or people are entering into a contract where like it's understood in society that if you are this kind of person, then you get to be that in conversations, you get to stay and not just like a career, but like I have anxiety. But the advent of anxiety is an important one. Like I wouldn't want to discredit that, because it used to be that you were just an outcast or a weirdo, or I feel like maybe it was more the case of somebody with anxiety would just get bullied, and there wasn't like this, oh, the reason I'm different is because I have anxiety. But nowadays, because of the advent of the technology of anxiety, it's like everybody who's weird can now back off of it and just say that like they're, and it's also not false either. Like people have that anxiety. I'm saying this is a useful thing to invoke and explain yourself through because, and it's good that we have it. We didn't have it before because it's true that people have anxiety, and anxiety is like a problem. It's like an unspoken set of like unspoken discomfort that you have and in seeing yourself in relation to other people, and like we have a word for that rather, and it would have been difficult to arrive at that word because it's kind of like an unspoken difficult thing to describe that you would have it. But like we get more and more specific in our words for like this is the problem, but also like it's very diversified what you can enter into at this point. There's a lot of games, and there's a lot of games, and we're making more of them all the time, and there's more apps being made and new ways of making apps, like decentralized ones as opposed to centralized ones. And at the point that there are like decentralized apps are the name of the game, this is more like this is more in the direction of people being able to write their own code, but it's just that the world will be more affected by code writing at a more mainstream level is the direction of decentralized apps as opposed to centralized ones, because decentralized apps are given over to people, and even to the further to the extent that the people creating it are more in the business of like individual people at the common level can more create decentralized apps as opposed to centralized ones based on the definition of central versus decentral, because central is more up to corporations, but central is more corporations for you and for me, for corporations for I. And it's like I'm having trouble finding the coherence in what I'm saying, because it's more like it's more that I realize that I'm saying it rather than that I'm outside it enough to just provide you a coherent, consistent message. And I just really am sorry about that. I'm so sorry. I'm just really apologetic. But you go through like, maybe I'm just sorry today. Maybe I'm sorry for being bad. Maybe I'm just guilty. I'm guilty and I'm sorry for being bad and not being good at it. And I'm sad about that. But it's too bad that that how sad I am. And do you see that? Do you recognize that I'm sad? What am I asking for out of you that I'm sad? It's just that that's a place that people go when they see when they see somebody else communicating their sadness, is that they're like, oh, I don't want any part in that, because they're just trying to, what do they want out of me? So I'm saying to you, there's nothing I want in my sadness. It's just that this happens to be that I am sad at this moment. And then because people don't like to deal with that, they're like, well, then that could take a whole day. This is whole other thing. If I'm going to talk to you about your sadness, then I actually have to like figure something out about you. And so people don't really, and so it's always the pursuit of happiness, and then you're a moron if you're not engaging with the rules and regulations of happiness, as opposed to it's like that you're not trying to make yourself profitable and attractive at all times so as to engage in happiness. Like, because not everything is money, not everything is profit. Something like, and the things that aren't are just like, this is sad and I'm a loser. And that's the thing, is thinking that you it's like winning versus losing. And this is the pathway that I would want to get off of my repetitive pathways to say something less repetitive, or like there's more fun pathways you can go on. And one that's fun to me at this moment is the dynamic winning versus losing, that like someone like Jeff Bezos is so afraid of losing that he ran away from it every step of the way. He made the decision. He's so afraid of losing that he ran away from it, screaming and crying for his entire life, and then won at everything. Like that's somebody that everything he did was win, is what you describe the guy who became the richest guy in the world. But it's like a fear of losing, and it's like a fear of losing isn't necessarily healthy because you're not allowing that. But um like don't make it so that you have to win in every circumstance or look like you're winning, because you're probably also a loser in addition to being a winner. But I'm saying that in some scenarios you are a loser, in some scenarios you are, in some groups of people you are a beta. You're not the number one alpha, or like you're not the leader or you're just going to lose. Like you're a loser somewhere. And so people think that you have to win, and I think that sometimes too, or I'm like, well, people have to know that I'm winning or right. It's like being right all the time. And we just need to live in a world that less engages in the wrong versus right battle or drama, because it doesn't matter who's wrong and who's right, really. It's just this legal thing, and it's indicative and reflective of a more legalistic culture that we put the onus on wrong and right. We say that, like, well, we can listen to you if you were right or wrong, because this is very legal to determine who is right and in the correct bounds for stating the right things. But like it's legal, it's definitional. But I mean, so then part of that is a result of maybe a world that doesn't think enough about the words that it's using, or doesn't think enough about words themselves. Like um, doesn't critique words. Like the world doesn't critique words themselves enough, I don't think, like because they don't know that they're saying them, and saying them a lot of times, or just using them to stake their reputation in them or gain some sort of advantage. People are using words and identities to gain some sort of advantage over other people, and don't get to the heart of recognizing like some of the uselessness in words, like that people use the word consciousness, and this is just a buzzword where they're like, oh, consciousness. Or people use the word aliens. This is a buzzword that has no conclusion, and it has no result. Like I guess what I'm saying in my sadness at this moment is just is my inability to deliver the thing with the amount of sound output as I want. So like I need to allow myself to be quieter or something, like um rather than think that it always has to be stated, or like people, then you don't sound like a winner if you don't project the right sound. Like you don't sound like a winner then if you don't sound very stated and confident. The need to be confident, that like, but just we need to allow people in the world to not be confident, or like still listen to them even if they weren't confident. But it's like maybe just naturally it doesn't sell as much, and so the place for inconfidence will always be your trod underfoot. But I don't know. Is that one of those things that like society says you can't be inconfident, but then the world then gravitates towards that because that's the thing that you can't be. Like the same way that music and fashion evolved to include the things that you're not supposed to wear and shit like that. Or it's like more embarrassing to do that, but then that becomes the new thing. Is it one of those things where it's like inconfidence is the future, or unlikability is the future, because what you can't be at this moment is unlikable, you see, given the state of things where everybody's doing everything to get the most likes, like, and just that popularly you're supposed to be likable. But like popularity is always likability. It's just that it might, maybe anti-popularity becomes a thing. We've got to be able to move past popularity at some point, right? That's not so great of a message. And what I think about in my life sometimes is, if I think it's like I'm not really popular, but maybe I was right on the border of it enough to like want to talk about it a lot. Like not really popular, but it's almost like you could say that, but I'm not actually. But like, but that. But that doesn't matter. It's dumb. It's dumb to care about trying to impress in the name of popularity. But hopefully that's not what I'm trying to do, but it probably totally is, right? Maybe totally I'm just trying to be popular or likable. But I'm naturally not. But maybe there just arises a time, like the point at which anti-popularity becomes what people want, and then all of a sudden the world matches up with your circumstances so that they want an anti-popular person, and and if that's you, then you're just waiting for the time. Not that people like it's whatever. I don't know what I'm gearing myself up for. I don't know what I'm so excited about. That like, oh, a time when what, I got more views on my podcast. Why would I care about that? But obviously that's what people fucking care about, is just the numbers. Everybody wants the most likes. Like, obviously that's what people like. And like, you can't look like a loser or a winner, because like, as far as your message is concerned, people aren't going to want to agree with, people aren't going to want to be on board with somebody who doesn't project their opinions confidently. And so it sells better as long as you're in the game of, but like, so I guess I'm trying to be an anti-cell or something like that. Or just an incel. Or maybe that's as far as I make it. But but words are like, words are memes. Consciousness is a meme, that word. But I'm saying that people just meme these words, they don't recognize the meme of it. People don't, and they meme these words. That's all that they are. And memes are just viruses, and people are virusing their words around and shit. And people are memeing. It's just that we live in such a viral time of viruses and the need to be viral. And like, oh, I hope that I'm viral or have the potential to be. Like, if not now, then in the future, I hope that I'm viral. And like, TikTok is the newest version of the unnatural environment of likability. It's the newest version where people are like, would do anything to be popular on there, but it's still an unnatural environment where people are doing things in the name of likability. You still need a certain projection of sound and like cadence in the way that you talk. You have to look, and the lighting has to be right. Like, the image has to be really nice. It has to be visibly very well presented in order for you to make a TikTok that's popular and shit like that. It's still a popularity game, and the winners of it are the popular kids. It's still that, even though that's still what that is, even though it's like a new iteration of a social media that would appear to be more inclusive or more open-ended, or like more open-minded. But maybe it isn't so much. Like, and you would know that the more that you engage with it. Like, I put out a couple TikToks and they aren't that successful. And what's more difficult about putting a TikTok that doesn't get a lot of likes is those are the only ones that I see ever that don't get a bunch of them. Because every TikTok I see gets thousands and thousands of likes, because I'm just on the For You page. And it's probably the case that most of the TikToks actually don't get very many, but you don't see any of those. But this is the problem with the popularity contests. But, or it's just peripheral. Maybe you just have to be inclined towards visibility better. And I don't know that I am. I'm naturally conservative or reserving of a personality. Like, I'm not always you have to be more generous on there. I'm not always giving away. I'm not always forthright with what I actually think, because I'm typically conserving some amount of energy in a conserving sort of way. The same way conservatives are the people that save money or are really afraid of protecting it. They conserve all of it rather than spend it. They're not generous like liberals are. And it's just a reserved way of living, is the life of a conservative. That's why a lot of those famous, like the most famous conservatives got famous in their 40s and shit like that, like, or their 30s. Rush Limbaugh and like famous radio hosts like Hannity and Michael Savage. A lot of those famous conservatives got famous when they were older rather than when they were younger. Like, because liberal is more visible, is more for if you're younger. but like or at least that's a stereotype about it. But I would argue that the like Rush Limbaughs of the world would hit their peak of fame in their 30s and 40s because they're like conserving their personality around, like rather than they gave it all away or something. Like they're kind of just holding on to it. They're afraid. They're more concerned with keeping their money because they're afraid of losing money, and they like that the protecting themselves in that way. But like, so I don't know that I would naturally be good at dealing in the visible. I feel like I deal more in the imperceptible. That's what I like more. I'm more interested in a future that could play out or would play out. But like the word, like consciousness is a meme, and it becomes viral, and everybody starts saying it. Like everybody who's in the in-depth analysis podcasting community, like Joe Rogan and his friends, or just people who want a more like in-depth psychoanalytical perspective, whatever they're like they're talking futuristically or something. They're all in the game of talking about consciousness. Like consciousness becomes this really important cornerstone of what they're talking about because it's a dynamic idea, but like at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of people talking about consciousness over and over again and memeing it to each other, and like so that consciousness as a word gets passed around like a virus, because that's what we do with words, is that we pass them around. They become contagious like viruses, so that like it'll catch on the same way that memes do, and then people get a person will get a hold of consciousness and then provide their own opinion on it. They'll make a slight variation of the original thing and meme it in that way. But like they get this disease that they pass on, and the same way that memes go to everybody, if it's this phenomenon, if it's something that is viral and has the potential to be that, because a meme is just a concept, and so that's as simple and as basic as a meme is. That's how much a meme could be anything. That's how universal it is. A meme is like every word because it is just a concept. It's just particularly a concept that catches on in because it has the potential to be viral, and then it utilizes that potential in becoming a meme or becoming something more memorable. But it's like not everything has a potential to be memorable, but it becomes more memorable the more that it is given to the most people, so that people then on their own have a chance to make their own perspective out of it, and make it more memorable to themselves and other people. Like when people get to make their own impression and have their own impression on the thing, like it becomes both an input and an output to them. That's a more memorable experience that somebody would have with a word or a concept or an idea, like one that they both received and then they made their own memes, is like that makes it more memorable. But a meme becomes more memorable and becomes more of a meme the more that it is circulated, the more that it is passed on and new versions of it are created. But it's like I think the definition technically is that it's passed on through non-genetic means, like the same way that a disease is contagious. You pass it to somebody else, not because you're related to them necessarily, but even though that's the case, it's like a genetic thing where, or just giving somebody else the code of the program, like the first human or the first couple of humans that give birth to all other humans. They pass on the code of the DNA, and the DNA is the blueprint that dictates the program for the way that the program of humans, the way that humans play out, and then the way that all of their organs are organized, or whatever. Like the blueprint that DNA provides is like this program that tells you what is allowable for a human, and then like the basic structure of it, like this is the program of humans, this is what humans do, and this is how it plays out, and then this is what they do as a result of their code and shit like that. But like humans give birth to other humans, they pass along the code, and then it becomes this big viral thing at some point where the earth is populated with billions of humans, and it's a program that competes with other programs to be the most viral. And like you would be worried about an ideology taking over the entire earth, but in some regards that is what happened with humanity. Like humans as an ideology, humans as a program, took over the entire earth and like dominated other animals, other species, to the point of like that program took over everything. It's like an ideology that eventually rose to control everything. And there's something to be said about secret societies that are actually, that there are this tier of humans that are actually above humans, and they are that because of the sacrifices they've made in terms of elitism to secretly be above everybody. I'm talking about globalists that like if that potentially there's this tier of society that is above all other humans. They deal in this more intelligent realm because they made it a point to be above everybody, but like their situation also reflects that, if it is true, because they're the people in power over all other humans. And then it just so happens that all the people with the most power got together, and then like if they're all practicing some religion, and they like there's evidence for some of this with the skull and bones secret societies and fraternities that you hear about that all the politicians are involved in, and they have to take like oaths to be in and shit like that. And it would I believe that there is something to be said about that. There's secret societies beyond the perceptible level of governors that we can see, and it would make sense that that happened because the leadership as it stands across the world in different countries hasn't changed a ton over the last like 250 years. But think of how long that the government, U.S. government, has had the chance to has been running as it stands in like ways that they're going to deviate from their power to try to create more power. I mean, if it's the people that are already in the business of making themselves powerful and giving themselves positions of authority, like why wouldn't these people go even further so that they progress past the level of like, why wouldn't there be things that we didn't know about? Why wouldn't there be a group of people beyond the level that's visible to commoners, when as long as that's already the situation where you have the commoners, which are us, and then you have the elite class, like that is already given to elitism. Why wouldn't they progress into further levels of elitism? Why wouldn't they go further in making good on the name and the titles that they've given themselves, what they identify themselves through? Why wouldn't they go further in identifying themselves to power? And like, so I'm talking about that with respect to, so like humanity is like a virus that eventually took over the whole world, but viruses are like it's like in the SpongeBob movie when Plankton put those chum buckets on everybody and they're like mind controlled. But that's just kind of a stereotype storyline that kind of is the same as a zombie apocalypse, where like everybody gets inflicted with the same zombie mentality, but just like that everybody it's a virus being passed to everybody is like people being zombies, but in the area of whatever the virus is, to the point. So like if everybody is saying consciousness can kind of be this thing that you're under the influence of, if you're really influenced by it, or you're somebody like Lex Friedman, where you're like so under the influence of consciousness you can't stop talking about it, and you're like spreading that idea to other people, but like it's because you want to talk about it so much, and you have such enthusiasm about it. If you get really enthusiastic about a topic like consciousness, then that will catch on to other people, and like because it'll be contagious to people. Your excitement about something, your passion for something, and that'll catch on like a virus, and then other people will be inflicted in it, and they will be like brain controlled by consciousness. It's like consciousness is like sentient in this way, or all words are sentient like this, where they kind of have the power to mind control you, at least partially, in the area of like if it's consciousness, then you're talking about consciousness, you're living your life more in that way, and delving into the awareness that comes along with it, like becoming more aware of of things is what you would do if you're like really in on consciousness. But you can use a word like this, stake your reputation, and it's like easy. It's like a drug that you can go back to. You're like, I'm identified to this, because people are identified to a number of things. Like it can also provide to you the ability to stake your reputation in something. So it like provides a number of things that's very good for you, and it can take you over. It can kill you in some respects if it goes too far. Like maybe not so much consciousness, but like a drug that you're under the influence of. I know that that might be a leap to say that consciousness could be as potent enough a drug as like heroin, that it's like you could be addicted to it. But I mean, like, it's addiction or out of whack balance of something, like something that you're devoting yourself too much towards is a relationship that's out of whack. That's something that you're defining yourself by too much, is in a lot of cases ultimately what kills you. Like addictions to something is what kills you, because it's too much of you defining yourself to something that isn't you, and eventually you lose yourself in the process, and you could die even if you didn't die physically. Like you could give your mind too much away to one thing, and then like you get lost in the process, or whatever, if you're devoting yourself too much to one other entity or idea or ideology, or just like a way of living, then you become that as opposed to what you were. So it's like there, but so it depends on how much you're going to enter into the relationship of some other thing that, but so it can be a virus that kills you if the like the parasitic host becomes too overwhelming to you. I mean, if it's a real virus and the cells that replicate in you once you contract the virus overwhelm your immune system, like the population of virus cells becomes too great, then you would die from the virus. And it's the same thing as an idea that you give yourself over to too much. That if you are, I mean, it might reach I'm saying it might reach a critical point where you give yourself over to it too much. I don't know that that would always mean that there was no going back or something, like with a virus that like you couldn't return. But but memes are like viruses in this way. But what I'm saying is, like, people are all under the control of certain things, to the point that like, and it could be like, yeah, to the point that it's sort of like mind control, and it's like mind control propagated by the idea. And I'm saying that there could possibly be something nefarious about an idea, like consciousness, even though it wouldn't seemingly have any intent, is able to spread itself like a virus, or aliens. Like, and because what's difficult about the virus, the meme, and it's like this meme where everybody just says it, everybody has their own take on it, their own version of it, and that's like a particularly potent meme, is aliens, because for whatever reason we can't ever, like, as long as it's aliens, it only ever exists in this realm where we're like, oh, what's out there? And it's always the realm of that there's all these documentaries of talking heads of people seeing an alien, or just like this story of government cover-ups or something. It only ever deals in cover-ups and shit that you don't know about, and it never goes further than that, because we don't actually have any evidence of aliens, at least as far as the entire public is concerned. And as far as we know, all the stories that people have of aliens are just exaggerations, ultimately, as long as aliens only ever deals in these shady documentaries that people make. As long as it's aliens, it will only ever be this confusing thing that can't be pinned down to anything. So it's this potent kind of meme that you could give yourself over to too much, because there's no end result. It's like ultimately not going to be helpful to you, but you could do it forever, because there's no end to figuring out if there's aliens, the same way there's no end to the universe and we haven't mapped out any of it. It's just like, it's escapism to talk about aliens too much. It's escapism of saying, like, who knows what's out there, but that's an excuse you can use to make yourself look good. Like, but it's just, you can give a lot of power to a term, and then it becomes this more magical situation where you might be using a term to protect yourself or stake your reputation in it. Like it could be consciousness or aliens, or or whatever. And like, if it's something that you never make it a point to stop talking about, then but like it can be this thing where you defend yourself with it or use it like as a rabbit's foot, where you just bring that up in conversation to protect yourself, or just that you're using it when everybody else has used it, when it's just a word, when words are just memes. They are that because of the way that they're circulated, because they're just like, oh, you can say it, and then you're slightly in relationship to this word by speaking on its authority, or like saying that you can. It's like it can become a sort of magical thing to you where you're like, I'm using this word, or like you can use it to make yourself look good or look intelligent. If it's a more intelligent concept, you can hide behind it and use the power that it has to say that you're intelligent, because consciousness is a more intelligent, more involved and complex idea. And so you can tell other people that you are complexness when you only speak on complex ideas. You can tell other people that you are complex, or like you are complicated, when you're like, see, these are, but it's like it's a medium, it's a way of transferring energy, are these words, and so we utilize different ones, but it's a different set of characteristics, and so you use that to say who you are. So it's not like it's evil to do that, like it's helpful. These are tools, they assist you in what you're trying to communicate, and in explaining and expressing yourself. That's what words help you do that. But they can be like viruses, and it's really the case that the medium is always there. Like, oh, I'm at hour 5. The medium is always there of whatever the medium is, like whatever it is that you could speak yourself through, like the ability to speak it is there. It's just that it's dependent on what avenue you choose and what pathway, like, or in other words, which particular medium, which word, like, but like before there are even words, there was this way, like, I'd say that the ability to express was already there, but then all of a sudden we diversified it at some point we, through word creation, diversified the medium to specific mediums, the same way that we diversified like TV channels. But like in creating more and more specific words, we diversified the medium, like defined more specific mediums to specific ranges of emotion. And then, but like the medium is always there. And so then the virus is like, what? And then the virus is like, but so we get to this point in the world where we're like really dealing with viruses, because part of it is that the onus of authority is on medical authority, because naturally we couldn't overcome medical authority as a large group of people, because people know that they can't be their own doctor. And so we will always read power and sacredness into medical authority, as long as we don't see it in ourselves to do that, which we're not able to do that at this point. And so the authority itself that used to say that, well, it used to hide behind journalism, and that was okay to hide behind that like 30 years ago, because people are like, oh yeah, you have to listen to a journalist. But we start to wear away and deteriorate journalistic authority, and then authority, or like media, goes to the next thing that we have to hold in high regard, which in this case currently is medical authority. And then I think as a result of that, what comes about in the world is there's a lot of virus speak, or like the idea that commoners are not over a virus. You have to listen to medicine, because it's only medicine that controls viruses, that can tell you exactly what to do. And so you can't decide that on your own. And like that on its own is a virus. But it comes at a time when when computers and technology is so prominent, and like viruses that can happen. And I think that and like really decentralization is sort of like a virus that kills centralized platforms, where centralized platforms are more given over to centralized servers that could be prone to viruses. And decentralization, like herd immunity, destroys viruses, and decentralization is a bit more of a peer-to-peer, more of a herd immunity idea, or the distribution of peer-to-peer, or like a word being given over to everybody in the public, gives the public the ability to control its narrative. And this is a distribution of the energy of the word so that it's not potent in any one area, or it's like a compromising of the potency of an idea is what would happen to the idea when it's given to everybody. And if centralization, like centralized servers and applications, are decentralized or made more peer-to-peer, then this is antithetical to virality, a viral nature of things, because like when you don't have the ability to make things phenomenal, make things a phenomenon, and when all phenomenons are just distributed to everybody, and it's more and more difficult to be a single person responsible for a phenomenon, for something you said or something you did that became viral, which is the world we're going towards, is more against viruses. But it's like this is what comes about at the point that the onus is more put on medical authority and technology. I mean, I'm just saying a convergence of events leads to everybody speaking about viruses. Like, viruses is what we need to deal with right now. And it's the same with memes. It's the same reason that memes are so popular, so prominent as an idea and what they do in culture. I think that we are engaging with viruses, and just overall, are we going to, as a group of people, survive past viruses, or are we going to be defeated by them? And we would move past it by recognizing that we don't have to give power to people that say that they know everything about viruses and shit like that when they don't. But it's like a virus can be a virus to you, like you can contract viruses that are unhealthy to you, that aren't so much diseases, but they're like unhealthy lines of thought that somebody else gave to you through a word that they said that makes you feel negative, because maybe it's just like doesn't sit well with you, because there are different people in the world. If they are opposition to you, like, they will give you a negative reaction. If they're a really different person than you, just with what they say naturally, it'll be a negative reaction to you. With something, the kinds of things that people can say from people that aren't like you, they provide you negative reactions, and then these things sit with you. Like, you can sleep off a disease of negativity or of sadness that you got as a result of something that somebody said to you, or just not so much that, or like maybe being around negative energy from someone. Like, it's not necessarily something you'd be able to speak to, or you're like, oh, that came from this person, this sadness. But like, sadness can be unhealthiness that you receive just from other people's mentalities, and this a lot of times is a disease that you need to like go to sleep, and hopefully, and then you will not be sad anymore. Like, you need to sleep off diseases like unhealthy lines of thought and anxiety, like sadness, and these are given to you like viruses, like words that are harmful to you, that didn't sit well with you. Like, you need to correct for the unhealthiness. And yeah, because words are like that. Words make you sick, I think, if they're the wrong ones, and if they don't sit well with you. And that sickness is often, that can be helpful to you. Like, if it's something that you weren't thinking of before, like maybe that's why it didn't sit well with you, but like, you might get better in the process after you'll be more immune to that kind of thing in the future, the more that you practice in hearing things that are negative to you, or you hear negative comments, or you put yourself out there so that you might be criticized, and then you receive criticism. Like, practicing and doing that helps you ward off criticism further by you build up immunity towards it. But you need to, and you are only able to build up immunity. So like, something especially doesn't sit well with you if your immune system hasn't seen that before, or if it's something totally foreign to you. This is something that you'll have to spend more time processing as a person, either mentally or physically, if it's a virus or a mental virus. And it's like, just go out and do things so that you can build up more immunity and be a more complex person, or just have lots of things to speak on, or be more interesting. I don't know. Just got to do more things so that you're good at it, and don't be felled by viruses. Don't hear that there's viruses out there, and then that means that you get to sit at home, and don't go along with the people that are like, oh yeah, virus is the reality, so that you just become somebody who is affected by viruses automatically just upon hearing about them. Like, don't make yourself easily influenced and easily susceptible to viruses. Be in the business of fighting them off. I don't know. I just like, for some reason now I think that I have to end this with a particular message or something. Like, I need to get out of the business of doing that. But that was an hour 14, and hopefully you listened to the last half hour, because that was the good half hour. And but I'll talk to you later. Bye.